Ryan Reynolds just dropped a bombshell on Blake Lively, exposing her manipulation, and a $2 million payment to secure a favorable ruling. Now Ryan is gathering sympathies on Instagram, claiming he's not involved to save his career. But the damage is done and Blake's reputation is in ruins. The only thing real about this whole case was the reality of Ryan Reynolds completely shattering the perfect little image that Blake had carefully constructed. The moment Ryan Reynolds opened his mouth, everything changed and Blake's shiny reputation took a nosedive into the gutter. And let me tell you, that courtroom meltdown wasn't just a minor slip-up. It was the beginning of the end. Blake Lively, Hollywood's darling, reduced to a victim of her own making. But it wasn't just so the entire house of cards started to crumble, and boy did it crumble fast. The win Blake thought she secured was anything. But on June 10th, the world was ready to crown her the winner of the century. Headlines everywhere celebrated her triumph over Justin Baldoni. People were calling it a clean sweep, a major victory for the ages. But here's the thing, this win was as hollow as a Hollywood press release. The truth was already sneaking out from the cracks. By the next day, legal blogs and case trackers were posting updates that Blake's team never expected to see the light of day. Turns out two of Baldwin's most important claims were quietly dismissed overnight, without explanation, without argument, and without trial. The kind of dismissal you get when someone's in too deep and they need to make sure the truth doesn't get out. Let's start with the claims that vanished first. We had the creative control issue, something that's not exactly a small fry in Hollywood. Baldoni accused Blake of hijacking the entire production, rewriting scenes without his approval, and basically turning the film into her own personal vanity project. But no, let's just ignore that, right? Toss it out like yesterday's gossip. But the real kicker was the undisclosed financial ties that one could have destroyed Blake's career if it came to light. She allegedly had secret ties to a private investment group back in production, pushing her own financial interests while pretending to play the poor, misunderstood actress. But note those claims gone dismissed with zero explanation, as if they were just a pesky detail no one needed to bother with. Now, let's talk about the man who made all of this possible, Judge Alan Lehman, the same judge who just happened to be the brother of Noah Lehman, a Hollywood director who'd worked with Blake on a charity campaign. Funny how that wasn't mentioned, right? Suddenly it all makes sense. The pieces fall into place. A judge with Hollywood connections quietly dismisses two of the most critical claims against Blake. And no one thinks to ask questions. Just a coincidence, right? Sure, if you buy into whole judges are always impartial fantasy. But the rest of us aren't that naive. And what makes it even worse, Blake's PR team had undisclosed meetings with the judge's office just before the ruling. Talk about shady. The only thing transparent about this case was a lack of transparency. Now, what do we get when all this hits the fan? Ryan Reynolds, the man who's been quietly observing the train wreck that was his wife's life, finally decides to do what most decent people would do, call it out. He wasn't having it anymore. No more silence. No more protecting her carefully curated brand. He dropped the hammer on social media with his now infamous Instagram post. Justice isn't a Netflix script directors don't cast. Judges, just let that sink in for a moment. In one sentence, Ryan didn't just expose Blake's PR circus. He made it crystal clear that he knew exactly what was going on. Hollywood influence check, corrupt judge check, a wife who thought her husband would sit quietly while she played the victim card for the press, big fat check. And then the internet went wild. Bloggers, Twitter detectives, and legal analysts all jumped on it, dissecting every word. Ryan wasn't being cryptic. He was sending a message loud and clear. This isn't a clean win, it's a dirty game. And Blake, she was not happy. I mean, if you're sitting in a courtroom already on the edge of losing everything, having your husband publicly drop a bombshell like that is the last thing you want sources say. She had a fooling meltdown when she saw Ryan's post. I mean, can you imagine screaming, accusing him of betraying her? That's not the reaction of someone who's innocent. That's the reaction of someone who knows. The jig is up. She was terrified, not because She was a victim, but because she realized the truth was out there, and it was far worse than she ever let on. What did Ryan know? Well, everything. And that's what's so beautiful about his Instagram post. While everyone else was buying into the narrative that Blake was just another misunderstood actress caught in a media storm, Ryan showed up and wrecked that illusion. No more pretending, no more carefully controlled media appearances. It wasn't about his career. It wasn't even about their marriage. It was about something much more important, the truth. So here's where things get really interesting. What happens when the judge involved in a case is connected to the person being accused? The question of impartiality becomes impossible to ignore, and that's exactly what happened with Judge Alan Lehman. You couldn't make this up. If you tried, his brother, a Hollywood director, had a working relationship with Blake, but the judge, he conveniently decided that the two claims most likely to damage Blake's reputation should just vanish. No explanation, no trial, just gone. And yet for some reason no one thought to investigate this. Hollywood is literally built on connections like these. But the unbelievable thing here is that Blake thought she could just glide through this unscathed. She thought Ryan would stay quiet like some silent little pawn in her PR game. But Ryan was having none of it. He wasn't her lapdog. He wasn't her PR shield. And he certainly wasn't going to sit back and watch while she tried to destroy both their reputations. Ryan Reynolds isn't the kind of guy who stays silent. When things hit the fan on June 11th, he posted a cryptic message on Instagram. Justice isn't a Netflix script. Directors don't cast judges. And let's be real, this wasn't just some passive-aggressive social media post. This was Ryan's subtle but brutal way of saying, I know what's going on, and you're about to find out too. Blake Lively may have thought she was walking away from this case as a victorious hero, but Ryan's post was the wake-up call the world needed to realize that this whole thing was more scripted than anything Netflix could come up with. A media frenzy that followed Ryan's post was like watching a bomb go off in slow motion. His words weren't just a gentle nudge, they were a full-on slap to Blake's carefully constructed victim narrative. People were finally connecting the dots, realizing that the glittering PR image Blake had so meticulously built was nothing more than smoke and mirrors. Her whole victimhood crumbling faster than her reputation. The post sparked a flurry of speculation and disbelief. Suddenly the media stopped asking, how did she win? And started asking what was really going on behind the scenes. Ryan Reynolds, the man who had been playing the good husband, finally said enough was enough. And then, of course, Blake had her meltdown. Sources say she was devastated by Ryan's post. Really devastated. Was she devastated because the truth came out, or devastated because her manipulative PR machine was now exposed for all to see? According to insiders, Blake reportedly screamed at Ryan for betraying her, for dragging their personal drama into the public eye. But let's be real here. How could Ryan stay silent while she continued to play the world for a fool? The way Blake handled this whole mess was like watching a bad reality TV show, except it wasn't scripted and the stakes were real. Ryan wasn't out for revenge. No, he was out for survival. It was his career, his integrity, and his family at risk. And once he saw how deep this was going, how far Blake was willing to go to control the narrative, he had no choice but to speak up. Now the leaks started coming in after Ryan's post. And let me tell you, they weren't just little drops of information. These were full-on waterfalls that were about to flood the courtroom. Emails started circulating that Blake's PR team was conspiring with Judge Lehman's office. And I mean, can you even be surprised at this point? Of course, she was working the system. It was like watching a puppet master pull the strings, and Blake was the star of the show. One email sent just days before the ruling revealed Blake's PR team discussing strategies with Judge Lehman's brother, Noah Lehman, the well-known Hollywood director. The timing perfectly suspicious, the content even more. So these emails were a bombshell that nobody saw coming. Blake's team was literally working behind the scenes, trying to ensure that her claims would get dismissed without a single shred of public scrutiny. But that's not all. Allegedly, Blake's camp made a $1.2 million payment to Noah Lehman's consulting firm. Yes, you read that right, $1.2 $2 million to a Hollywood director's consulting firm. It wasn't just shady, it was downright illegal. If this all checks out, the judicial ruling wasn't a victory for Blake. It was a favor, plain and simple. And guess who was the recipient of this favor? You guessed it, Blake. Lively. The whole case was looking like a Hollywood thriller. Except it wasn't fiction. It was happening in real time. But wait, there's more. Diane Renner's a former assistant to Judge Lehman came forward with testimony that sent shock waves through the entire legal community. She overheard conversations between Judge Lehman and Noah Lehman that hinted at the judge being under pressure to rule in Blake's favor. What did she hear? It's bigger than both of us. And I'm doing this once, but never again sounds like a line from a crime drama, right? But no, this wasn't scripted. It was a reality of corruption. At play, Diane didn't just hear a few words, though she had the receipt. She provided a timeline of undocumented meetings between Blake's PR team and the judge's office just days before the ruling. The meetings weren't recorded in any official capacity. No visitor logs, no email trails, just blacked out gaps in the calendar. And guess who had the guts to blow the whistle? Diane Renner's. She wasn't going to be a part of this cover-up anymore. And then came the real bomb. Diane Renner's provided evidence that Blake's PR team had arranged a $1, $2 million payment to Noah Lehman's consulting firm. This wasn't some random coincidence. This was a direct bribe to secure a favorable ruling. The case went from a messy legal battle to a full-blown criminal investigation. And once it hit the media, everything changed. Now, let's talk about Blake's financial fallout. It was as if the universe was collectively saying no more. Blake's carefully managed brand, the one that Hollywood had once. A door began to unravel faster than she could pretend it wasn't happening. Hollywood didn't just back away. They pulled a full 180 major brands, and networks started distancing themselves from her. Like she was radioactive. Take Netflix, for example. Blake had an upcoming special, Conversations with Courage. That special gone just like that, was quietly pulled from Netflix's release calendar. No explanation, no fanfare. If that doesn't scream tarnish reputation, then I don't know what does. And her product lines, Betty Buzz and Betty Booze, also removed from promotional materials. Can you blame them? Who wants to be associated with someone who has become the poster child for scandal? But it wasn't just Blake feeling the heat. Ryan Reynolds, her husband, and once the golden boy of Hollywood, wasn't immune to the fallout. Either Disney paused the promotions for Deadpool 3, which had already been in the works for years. Apple TV Plus also backed out of a multi-million-dollar deal after Ryan's testimony. And let's not forget Hugh Jingden, who reportedly voiced concerns about the potential damage to Deadpool 3's reputation. Ryan's name was now tainted, and the fallout from Blake's actions was touching everything connected to them. Hollywood has a way of getting rid of people who are too much trouble, and Blake's reputation was now in the trash. The studios weren't just pulling back, they were running in the opposite direction. What was once considered a golden brand had turned into a public relations disaster. The love story that once seemed so perfect, it was nothing more than a carefully curated performance, and now Blake's entire empire was crumbling under the weight of her lies. The truth was out, and Blake was no longer the woman she once pretended to be. Blake Lively's breakdown after media backlash is the kind of thing you'd expect from a bad soap opera. If you watched her struggle in public, you'd think she was auditioning for a role in Hollywood's most dramatic breakdown. But this wasn't fiction, this was reality, and Blake's carefully constructed perfect image was falling apart right in front of her eyes. Photographers caught her looking distressed. But let's be real, Blake wasn't distressed because of the way of her actions. She was distressed because she realized the web of lies was unraveling at the speed of light. Her entire empire built on lies, manipulation, and PR gloss was now exposed for the world to see. As if that wasn't enough, Blake's PR team was in full damage control mode. But here's the thing, once you cross the line like Blake did, no amount of PR spin can save you. The Fenwick Collective, her high-powered PR firm, was scrambling to keep the situation from imploding further. Too bad they weren't as good at damage control as they thought as soon as the connections between Blake's camp and Judge Lehman's brother started to leak the cracks in her image became gaping holes. Fenwick Collective saw the writing on the wall. They drop her faster than a bad script. You know things are bad when even your PR team can't stomach the mess you've made. The crisis management team, who had once worked overtime to keep Blake looking perfect, was now washing their hands of her. If even her PR firm can't stand by her, you know she's in serious trouble. But the leaks didn't stop. Their anonymous sources from Fenwick started speaking out, and what they revealed was pure gold for anyone who's ever been curious about how deep the scandal really ran. According to the leaked messages, Blake wasn't just someone caught in a PR nightmare. She was the architect of her own downfall. It became clear that she was willing to do anything to protect her image, even if it meant manipulating the entire judicial process. Who knew that an actress who once played the perfect girl next door was actually behind the scenes, pulling strings, trying to control everything from media coverage to court rulings. The public wasn't buying the victim's story anymore. What started as an alleged misconduct claim now looked more like a carefully orchestrated PR stunt that completely backfired. Blake's attempts to manipulate the media into framing her as the misunderstood heroine fell apart faster than a cheap suit as Blake's public image continued to spiral. A legal storm was brewing in the background. On June 15th, the case was officially placed under federal review, and it wasn't just a random procedure. The Southern District of New York now had its eyes on the case thanks to the integrity concerns surrounding Judge Lemon's ruling. But it gets better. Blake's entire legal strategy was about to come under the microscope, and this time it wasn't about courtroom tactics. It was about criminal exposure. Let's talk about the real stakes here. Blake could now face serious criminal charges. This isn't just a he said, she said situation, no. This is about judicial bribery, tamper with evidence, and a web of corruption so thick it could make even the most hardened Hollywood execs cringe. And if the bribery angle wasn't enough, New York penal law Section 245 came into play if the $1 $2 million payment to Noah Lehman's consulting firm is proven to be part of a quid pro quo. Blake's not just facing a career disaster, she's looking at criminal charges. I mean, you've got to hand it to her. Who would have thought that someone who built an empire on playing the charming, relatable actress would turn into the main character in a scandal this huge? But here we are watching as Blake dances on the edge of criminal charges, but don't count out Justin Baldwin just yet. He and his team are making moves, and they're not backing down. They filed a motion for further investigation, citing new evidence that links Blake's camp to potential criminal activities. The legal team is playing a long game, and with each new motion filed, Blake's chances of avoiding criminal charges look slimmer and slimmer. Let's be clear, if anyone thought Blake was going to walk away from this with her image intact, they were sorely mistaken. This isn't just a case of bad publicity. It's the kind of legal nightmare that leaves a permanent scar. Now, let's talk about the financial fallout. Blake Lively's entire brand, the one that had been sold to us as the epitome of class and elegance, is quickly turning into Hollywood's most infamous cautionary tale. The damage isn't just coming from the legal front, it's also coming from the business side. Major brands are starting to back away from her like they're allergic to her name. It's not just one or two companies. Either it's the entire industry. Take Netflix, for example. They had a special lined up for Blake, Conversations with Courage, which was supposed to drop on July 2nd. That special gone, just poof, vanished. Why? Because no one wants to be associated with a woman who's swimming in legal and PR disaster. Netflix quietly removed it from their release calendar, and that's a move that speaks volumes. If a platform as big as Netflix is distancing themselves, you know you've hit rock bottom. And her product lines, Betty Buzz and Betty Boos, which she had worked so hard to promote, are nowhere to be seen anymore. They've quietly disappeared from all promotional materials. You can almost hear the sighs of relief from the brands who have been stuck with her name attached to their products. Because let's be honest, who wants to sell drinks and merchandise with Blake's name on it? when her brand is now a sinking ship. But it's not just Blake who's suffering the consequences. Ryan Reynolds is caught in the crossfire to the guy who'd been trying to stay out of the mess now. Finds himself dealing with his own set of professional setbacks. Disney, which was Allen on Deadpool, let hit pause on any further promotion for movie and Apple TV+. They were all set to give him a multi-million-dollar deal, but once Ryan's testimony became public, they pulled out faster than a celebrity at an unpaid event. Even Hugh Jackman, Ryan's co-star and longtime friend, reportedly voiced concerns about the damage to Deadpool 3's reputation. If that's not a sign that Ryan is now in the midst of a PR nightmare zone, I don't know what is. It's not just studios pulling back. Either the entire Hollywood industry is now treating Blake and Ryan like a pair of radioactive lepers. No one wants to touch them with a 10-foot pole, and who can blame them in an industry where public perception is everything? Both of them are now a liability. Blake may have once been the golden girl, but now she's Hollywood's cautionary tale, the poster child for how quickly a reputation can go up in flames when you're too busy trying to control the narrative and too lazy to let the truth speak for itself. If you want to stay updated on this unfolding scandal, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next.